3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello everybody, my name is Corp Cosplay, and tonight on Monday Night Nerd, we are talking about 90s comic book movies before the MCU, before the DCEU. In the 90s, we had our own comic universe from all different genres and all different comic books. And tonight, we're going to go over 7 of them tonight and talk all about the craziness of what the 90s had to offer before everything went Disneyfied and all that fun stuff. Welcome to Monday Night Nerd. My name's Corp Cosplay, and I'm so glad you could be here. For those who are new to the show, I am a cosplayer in the Ontario, Canada area. I've been cosplaying for many, many years. I've been doing content for many, many, many years. And this is my podcast. We talk about movies, music, comics, cosplay, wrestling, everything under the sun. And tonight, 90s comic book movies is the topic of conversation. And if you're here, that means you must be a fan of comic book movies, and that means you must be a fan of nerdy stuff, which means you're probably going to be a fan of this channel, which means you should like, share, subscribe, and all those things, because it makes me know that you like the topic that I'm talking about, and I will do more of that in the future to make you folks happy. But let's start things off with a little bit of news. This past weekend was my last convention of 2024. I cannot believe we're at the end of 2024. We're a month and a half away, but I was at the Mississauga Comic Expo in Mississauga, Ontario. This is the second year I was at this convention. I was invited there a second time to be the host of the Cosplay Red Carpet, and I must say, as a fan of big cons like Fan Expo and Anime North, going to a little con by the Mississauga Library is so fun. It's so fun to see the kids out there cosplaying. A new generation of cosplayer is formed at events like that. And I was able to host the Cosplay Red Carpet, and I was so, so happy to do it. It was always a blast. Seeing all of the cool, you know what, a lot of cosplays that I don't know. There was so many anime cosplays there that I'm just like, I have no idea who these characters are, but they look amazing. The red carpet was a big hit. I had so many people come out. I was dressed as Luigi, and so many people came up and wanted pictures with me, were saying I did a great job. So thank you to the Mississauga Library. I hope I'm invited back next year. I will keep coming back to do that. It is always, always a fun time. Marcy in chat, how are you doing? I hope you're having a good night and a good week so far. So we did the Mississauga Comic Expo this weekend, and it was a blast. I also, while I was there, I did pick up a couple things. I don't always show off the merch that I got, but I did pick up some cool things. I picked up a Dazzler #1, which I'm a really big fan of. I was told that the artist who did this is actually from the Mississauga Library. He got a contract with Marvel, so I was really excited to get that. And then I was also gifted this, which I've never seen this, but I'm super excited to read this. This is Uncanny Spider-Man Fall of X. And folks, if you can look at that cover looks like if Nightcrawler and Spider-Man were combined. So I am super excited to see where this goes. The art looks really, really cool. Looks really, really fun. I'm excited to read this one. It's probably going to be my new nighttime novel that I'm going to fall asleep reading. But yeah, I was super excited to read that. I was super excited to meet everybody. Hopefully, I will be back again next year. Now, when it comes to 2025, we as cosplayers are always planning and always getting ready for the future. And I am already getting ready for 2025. And Crystal in chat is throwing me a wave. And Crystal is probably way farther ahead than I am. That is Pretty Nerdy Crystal on Instagram. She is already full-fledged into her next cosplay. I am starting mine. I apologize for the shape of my cosplay table. I know I try and clean it before the show, but I have just been working so hard on my plans for 2025. And I have, as with most things, I have an idea of what I want to do, but that's always going to change every 5 minutes because I always get new ideas. But definitely, right there, you can see that is Red Skull coming together. I'm really excited to show him off. He is going to be a skull similar to Ghost Rider. He is going to have a movable jaw because I want to talk as Red Skull. And more importantly, when I bring him to Fan Expo, I want every kid who's dressed up as Captain America to get a picture punching Red Skull in the jaw and kind of shifting it to the side, because I think that'd be a really hilarious photo to do. So hopefully there are a bunch of Captain America kids there, and I hope he will be ready for Fan Expo. So he will definitely be there. I had a lot of fun, like I said, wearing Luigi for the first time in a while. So I think I'm going to do a couple upgrades to Luigi for the 2025 season. So I definitely want to bring him out a little bit. And what do I got here? I've got a list here of things I want to work on. Probably going to be working on a little bit of a new Ghost Rider head. When that happens, I don't know. That's a future down the line. That might not happen until 2026. I might stick with the Ghost Rider of 2023 and 4 for the time being. I don't know if I want to do 3 skulls that fast. But yeah, I'm really excited for 2025 is going to bring. This has been the year that I talked about in 2020 that I said I wanted to be a guest at Fan Expo. I put that out there into the universe. I said in 5 years I want to be a guest at Fan Expo as a cosplayer. So fingers crossed. The applications have not come available yet. I did apply for Toronto Comic Con, so we'll see if that happens. I'll be happy with that too. But we'll see. You just got to put it out in the universe and see what happens. Other than cosplay, let's jump into a movie review, and then we're going to jump into more of a pop culture news. Movies. I love movies. I don't get as much of a chance to see as many as I'd love to, but this week I watched Alien Romulus, and I am a giant Alien fan. I have a xenomorph right above me, looking down on me, protecting me from the predators that are around. So I was really excited to see Alien Romulus, and all the people that I had talked to have said it's a great movie. Well, I can say also it is a great, great movie. I was so happy with how suspenseful the movie was, how it wasn't just a bombardment of action. It was slow, it was deliberate in all of its movements and parts. The Andy character is the star of the movie, if you've seen it. I don't want to spoil it too much. What platform is it on? My platform. Shh. I got to watch it. Let's just say that. I didn't download it illegally. Let's just say that. I didn't. Shh. Anyways, I love the movie. I thought it was a great movie. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but yes, the Andy character is the standout character for many ways. First, he is definitely the heartbeat of the movie. He's the one sort of driving the ship, no pun intended. But I definitely feel like he's got the most character development, and there's reason for that. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. But also, like I said, the suspensefulness of it is worth it. I feel it's just as suspenseful as number 2. It's not as slow as number 1. It has a little more action beats like number 2, which is good, but it doesn't go too far in it. I will admit the ending that, again, I don't want to go in too much, so I don't want to spoil it. The ending, though, I feel like could have been cut. I don't think it was necessary. The end battle, let's say, I feel like you could have ended it before that end battle started, and I would have been bravo 10 out of 10. It's one of the few movies that I feel like that ending kind of took a little bit away from it. I felt like it was a little unnecessary. I felt like it was not to advance the story, but to do a shock factor, so to speak. So I do feel like that held it back. However, I still recommend it. It is one of the best alien movies in decades. The last bunch have just been slow slogs about backstory. I feel like this takes it in a new direction, and I know they're already starting on a sequel, and that's great to see. Lastly, for the news, we're going to jump into a little bit of more topical news, let's say. It's not really something we cover here, but I feel like it is a talking point that everybody in the world is talking about, and I feel like I should give my opinion on it because I have a different standpoint than probably a lot of others do. I need to take a good drink of water for this one because it is going to be, it's not going to be a rant, but it's going to be, it's going to be an opinion. Let's talk about the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul boxing match. For those who don't know, Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet in the 1990s, has come out of retirement and is fighting Jake Paul. Yes, Jake Paul from the internet, from all of his, online credits, brother of Logan Paul from WWE, who has been boxing for the past couple years and is growing a following. Let's talk about this because there's a couple standpoints that I know a lot of people have some problems with this, and I want to explain why I didn't see a problem with this. First of all, when it comes to this being live on Netflix and Netflix falling apart when it happened, that's a problem. That's a problem. Especially because WWE is going to be joining that platform in just over a month with live streaming. So that's a bit of a scare for me. I was trying to watch the fight, and it was good until Jake and Tyson got out there, and then everything started stumbling and fumbling. So let's talk about the fight itself. For those who didn't see it, it was, I believe, 8 rounds, 2-minute rounds, which is uncharacteristic for most boxing matches. From what I know, it's usually about 8 to 10 rounds, 5 minutes a round. This was a marketing ploy. Plain and simple. And I saw it from a mile away. And if you didn't see it, that's because you're not a marketing person, or you got caught up in the drama of it. And Crystal is pointing out part of that drama. Always hating Jake Paul. Jake Paul has won his last couple of fights. They weren't decisive. There was a little bit of controversy, I believe, on the last one. I cannot remember who he fought. But going into this, if you guys remember, this was announced many, many moons ago. And there was a little bit of a back and forth between Mike and Jake. And it was sort of Jake saying, I respect you, Mike. I think this will be really fun. And no one cared. No one cared. The internet kind of went, eh. And then Jake started throwing jabs. And Mike Tyson started doing training montages. And that started to get people's hopes up of Mike's training, which means he's taking this seriously, and Jake Paul's running his mouth. That's not, they wouldn't be doing all this just to get us to pay for a ticket. Crystal in chat says his YouTube house channel was toxic and him and Tana was ridiculous. He's just a moron. He could be a moron, but you know what? He is an incredible, incredible marketer. And I got to give him and his brother Logan a round of applause for being marketers, because he markets himself as a villain. And the great boxers, and when it comes to wrestling and his brother Logan, you need someone to hate. And Jake has made billions now off of wanting people to see him get his head punched in. I want to inform everybody who didn't think that this was a marketing ploy and didn't think that thought this was a real fight. Mike Tyson has been a lifelong wrestling fan, has participated in wrestling, and is in the WWE Hall of Fame. Mike Tyson gets it. Mike Tyson understands that if he goes in there, dances around with Jake, gets hit a couple times, hits Jake a couple times, they're going to walk out with $1 billion. And in fact, I believe Jake left with $40 billion or $40 million, sorry. He just for that fight, he ended up with $40 million. Like, that's a lot to do what he did. And if anyone thought it was real, if Mike punches Jake in the face, Jake's career's over and no one cares about boxing anymore. The general public doesn't care about boxing anymore. If Mike gets his head kicked in, Jake beats an old retired guy. So it's a lose-lose for either winning. That's why they went to a 10-round decision. Now, did the boxing community, did the boxing regulation know it was going to go that way? Probably not. But did Jake and Mike go, hey, if we play into this, we both get to jump around for a little bit and make millions of dollars? It's wrestling, folks. That's exactly what they did. And I got to give them a round of applause, because as a business, if you take all the emotion out of it, and especially like what Crystal said, his YouTube channel being toxic and all that, take all the emotion out of it, because if you put your emotion into it, you stop thinking properly. If you pull all that emotion out and thinking of it as a business, Jake doesn't have to do jack for the next 5 years if he doesn't want to. Mike doesn't have to do anything for the next 5 years if he doesn't want to. And the best part about it is that everything that happened that night, Mike and Jake, everybody talking about it that night, got a whole bunch of people watching that fight that wouldn't have cared. And then, when it ended, everyone had an opinion. And then everyone went online the next day to talk about it, which made everybody who hadn't seen the fight want to see what happened. And it's just a continuous inbound marketing circle. And that is marketing genius for him. So I have to give Jake Paul a round of applause when it comes to marketing. I don't know enough about his channel to have an opinion on what he was like on YouTube and all that stuff. I know about Logan in Japan. I know that. I don't know a lot of it, but I've seen clips and I know why people don't like him for that. But honestly, Jake and Logan are doing incredible work just getting people to show up to watch them both get their heads kicked in. So as a marketer, bravo to both of them. You can have whatever opinion you want about them personally, but as a marketing fight, they both did an incredible job, and they got everybody to watch. And now they both don't have to do anything for like 5-10 years, and everyone's going to forget about it by the time the next one comes around. So bravo from a marketing standpoint. Folks, it is 7 o'clock. It's 7:15 now, 7:17 now, and we are about to jump into the main event, but I got to do two things before we start this off. Folks, if you're still here, that means you like this channel. It means what I'm talking about is something you're interested in, and I do this once a week, Monday Night Nerd, every Monday night. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit all those things that everybody on YouTube tells you to do. I just want you to know, when you do that, it tells me you like these things and you like what I'm doing here, and I'll do more of them. If you mention in the comments after the video's posted, hey, I really like what you said about Tyson, or hey, I don't like what you said about Tyson and Jake, great. I like knowing those things, because then I know what to talk about in the future to make you guys happy. Still going to talk about what I like, but I like knowing you guys like it too. So if you can hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all those things, it means a lot. And second of all, it's time for the part that everyone loves, the sponsorship. The sponsor of this show, as always, every single week, is my beautiful, loving, amazing wife, because, as I say every week, I would not be the person I am without her. I love her so much. She inspires me to go and do stuff like this and to not care that I'm sitting in front of a camera talking about what I want to talk about, and not caring about Joe Pants 55 leaving a comment that I sound like an idiot and I shouldn't be talking about this stuff. I do it because I like doing it, and I thank you all for watching, and I thank her for all of her love and care and making me have the cojones to do this. I love you, hon. You will always be my sponsor. Folks, let's get ready for the main event. And the main event tonight is 90s comic book movies. We're going to dive into 7 90s comic book movies. I have to adjust my chair because this is a lot to get through. Last week, we went in through the 90s video game movies. We went a little bit of a deep dive into them. I got some feedback from some of you saying it was a little too much of a deep dive. So I'm going to pull back a little bit. We do have more topics this week than we did last week. So we're going to do a little bit shorter. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the movie is, and then I'm going to go into the things I liked, things I didn't like, and my other opinions on the movies. These are also not going to be in order because, I don't know, I just didn't put them in order. So There's going to be some in the late 90s, there's going to be some in the early 90s, and we're going to bounce around the decade a little bit. Now, there's also movies that are not on this list. I put out a post earlier today saying, what's your favorite? And a couple did come back. TMNT will not be talked tonight. Why? Because I talk about TMNT about 500 times on this channel, and I'll probably talk about it 500 times more. The Mask is also not on here because I do have a plan to do The Mask in the future because it is such a stark difference from the comic book that I really want to go into what the comic was like and what the movie was like and how they similar but very different. So we're going to save that one for later. So let's jump into the one. It is, again, 7:20, which means the younger audience should be watching it now. They're probably getting ready, a little bit later in the evening. We're going to get a little more adult. But when I was a teenager, this was my favorite comic book movie ever made, and there's a valid reason why, and she is on the front cover. We're talking about Barb Wire from 1996. This is one of those movies that every guy that I knew growing up knew what this movie was and had seen this movie at least once. I will proudly say, I had this on DVD. I had this exact version of DVD. I don't think I own it anymore. I might. I don't think I do. But I was very happy to own this movie, and I'm probably saying way too much on here. But I was a straight red-blooded guy, and I loved this movie. However, there is some problems with it, and we're going to go through those. So I'm going to give you a straight recap of what the movie is, and I want to sort of get your feelings on what you think about it. Barb Wire owns a nightclub in Steel Harbor, and she discovers her old flame is in town with his new wife. The new wife is a guerrilla fighter the local police are tailing, and he is looking for a way to help them get out of the country. That's a pretty interesting storyline. This comic, by the way, is very much about female, sexual, beating the crap out of guys, taking the law into her hands. So that's a pretty crazy story. She owns a nightclub. Her old flame's in town with his new wife. New wife's a guerrilla fighter, and the police are tailing them, and they're looking for a way out of the country. I'm now going to tell you another movie that exists, and tell me if you see any similarities. Rick Blaine, played by Humphrey Bogart, owns a nightclub in Casablanca and discovers his old flame, Isla, played by Ingrid Bergman, is in town with her husband, Victor. Laszlo is a famed rebel, and with Germans on his tail, Isla knows Rick can help them get out of the country. Does that sound oddly familiar to Barb Wire? Because the last movie I just talked about was Casablanca, one of the most well-known movies ever made. Yes, the script for Barb Wire is a surprisingly copied Casablanca. Yeah, it was I even kind of knew it when I first saw the movie. Like, I had seen Casablanca as a kid. I didn't get it. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't until I was older that I realized what the movie was. But when I was watching Barb Wire, I'm like, this feels really familiar. Even then, even at the last scene, is her and her old flame in front of a plane in the fog. Like, it's pretty much a carbon copy ripoff of Casablanca. From a movie standpoint, it's bad. Like, I won't sugarcoat it. It's a bad movie. Pamela Anderson as Barb Wire is actually not too bad. The character isn't very in-depth. It doesn't have a ton of, inner turmoil and stuff like that she has to play off of. It's a pretty bare-bones character, and it pretty much works for her as an actress. The first 20 minutes of the movie, before the whole Casablanca story kicks in, is pretty much the highlight of the movie. The first 5 minutes of the movie are what all guys remember. Then you get into her as a character, of her, going as a lady of the night, as they call them, bringing guys up, and then taking, beating the crap out of them to find out that she's actually been a bounty hunter on this guy. It's not a bad movie. Like okay. It's a bad movie, but if you're okay with B movies, it's not terrible. It's Casablanca done in a B movie fashion in a futuristic world. Yeah. If you've seen 20 minutes of it, you can pretty much turn it off after that. It just gets worse after that. But again, I was a teen, and that cover alone is like, ah. So, yeah. That's the first 90s movie. Crystal in chat. Crystal, you might want to watch it. I'm just saying. You might want to watch it. I don't know where you can watch it. Might be on YouTube. Actually, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I shouldn't say that. So that's the first one, Barb Wire. And Barb Wire is not a well-known comic. They've tried to bring that back several times over the years, and it's just it's a comic of the times. It doesn't really work nowadays. It's an okay comic. Like, I've read issues of it, and it's okay, but it's an indie comic. So yeah, the 90s, they tried to do everything. Like, at least now we've got Marvel and DC kind of going head to head, but a lot of the characters we're aware of in some point, even if you're not a comic fan. But in the 90s, this was all new territory to them, so they just tried to grab every comic property they could and try to do something about it. Like, that's there's the boy Sweet Tooth, the series. Like, that's like if they tried to make a full-fledged DVD movie out of that. Like, it works as a streaming show, but it's not something that I would go, hey, everyone remembers this. Not many do, unless you're a comic fan. So that's the first one we're going to talk about. The next one we're going to talk about is one of the funniest adaptations, where they tried to go as far as they could. They tried to do their best with it, but they missed a lot of key things from the story that we all know now because we've seen it in the Marvel Universe. But they failed miserably at it, and that is the original not the original, there's a black and white, the color original version of Captain America. Yeah, even just the suit alone is like, it's exactly what you'd think it'd be, but it's also a little too cartoony. So this one pretty much follows the traditional Captain America story. Steve Rogers becomes Captain America during World War II to battle the Red Skull. He's frozen in ice and subsequently is revived to save the President of the United States, who he knew as a child, from a crime family that dislikes his environmentalist policies. That end part's a little different, but it still works. This is a 1990s movie, and it is a 1990 movie to a T. And I say that because in the 90s, we still had a lot of 80s involved. So if you went to somebody who didn't know the year and you said this is a 1980s movie, they totally understand why. Because we hadn't fully gotten the 90s feel yet. So let's start off with the suit. Like we said, it is super latexy. It is super cartoony looking. In the movie, he just gets the suit. There's no detail into why, how, what it does, or he just gets the suit. And it's kind of jarring because, at least in the Chris Evans one, you get he's the guy trying to get bonds for the war. He's the mascot. It makes a little more sense. This one, he just shows up and has the suit, and you're kind of like, odd choice. The Red Skull costume in this, and I wish I had a photo of it, is very much like my Red Skull, where it is a rubber mask. Mine's not rubber, it's foam, but a rubber mask on a guy's face, and it looks awkward. It looks very awkward. But again, I give them the benefit of the doubt if that's all they had in the 90s. They really didn't have CGI and stuff like we do now, so And this was the first time really getting into the Captain America world, so I will give them the benefit of the doubt of that. There are three very infamous scenes that I will go over in this. First off, Captain America has a friend in this movie, and he does this move twice where he is a passenger in a vehicle and they are going to somewhere where Captain America doesn't want to go, or he knows they need to go somewhere else instead. And instead of simply looking at the driver, who he knows, and explaining, we need to go somewhere else because this is more important, he feigns being sick, stops the car, gets out, walks about 50 feet backwards, pretending like he's going to throw up. And when the driver comes and checks on him, he outruns them back to the car and drives off. It is hilarious to see the guy who is going to become the poster boy for the MCU, basically, besides Iron Man, do a I'm feeling ill twice in the movie. He does it once to a friend, and he does it a second time to his love interest in near the end of the movie. It is hilarious because the first time he does it, you're kind of laughing. The second time, he almost looks at the camera like, we're doing this again, and you just crack up watching it. The second funny scene in this is when Red Skull straps Captain America to a rocket. That is very much like a Captain America comic book scene. He straps him to a rocket and shoots the rocket at the White House. As he's flying strapped to a rocket, Captain America begins to heel kick the missile, and as he's heel kicking it, he is moving the trajectory of the missile to miss the White House. Again, I could see this happening in an early Captain America comic, but seeing it on the big screen is funny. And the last one is, I literally had to pause the movie because I laugh so hard when he does this. When he gets transformed into Captain America, which he does a very similar thing that Chris Evans goes through in the first Avengers movie, where the doctors are putting the serum into him and he's screaming in pain, and then he comes out of it and he's 100 pounds more muscle on him and he's huge. There is the same as the MCU movie. There is a Hydra agent in the room and he kills the doctor, so they can't figure out how to do it again. But the way he kills him is funny. I wish I had my Luger next to me because of the way he does it. He looks at the guy and he goes to shake his hand, and then as if he was going to do the 90's, the not shake his hand, he throws into a Heil Hitler and shoots him. Like, it is such an awkward move of go to shake the hand, up in the salute, and fires the gun and yells Heil Hitler. It is like a psych Heil Hitler, and if you've ever seen the Nostalgia Critic review on this, he points it out too, and I knew it before the review even started. I was like, he's got to make fun of this, and he does, and it is such an like someone had to write that in a script, like, okay, he's going to go for a handshake, and how do we get, just Heil Hitler and shoot him. Like, okay. Again, it is a corny early 90's comic book movie. It is not the MCU, powerhouses that they are now. This was the 80's building a Captain America movie that was released in the 90's. So if you're okay with the corniness and those scenes sound hilarious, go watch the movie because it is pretty darn funny. Oh, man. I'm just thinking about that Heil Hitler just makes me laugh. Okay, let's jump into one that I've seen recently. I had seen this cover so many times growing up. I was a guy that was always at the video store. We had a local video store just around the corner from my house, and technically right around where I live now. And we had a Blockbuster not far from here, and I was always going to rent movies and games. And I remember seeing this cover all the time, and I never ended up renting it. I don't know why, I just never did. And then I ended up streaming it probably a month ago, and I am so glad I saw it, and now I want to watch the rest of them. This is Darkman, which is a comic book from the 90s. This came out in 1990. Well, it was 80s, late 80s, early 90s. This came out in 1990. And if I knew the details of this movie, I would have seen it sooner, but I never did. This movie is directed by Sam Raimi, the guys who did Evil Dead, and stars Liam Neeson. So we got Sam Raimi, which means his cast of characters are all involved. Bruce Campbell's involved, Ted Raimi's involved. And we've got Liam Neeson. And this idea is a really cool idea. So, when Dunn's employed by a crime boss, lead a vicious assault on Dr. Peyton Wilder, Liam Neeson, leaving him literally and psychologically scarred. An emergency procedure allows him to survive. Upon his recovery, Wilder can now find solace only by returning to his scientific work, developing synthetic skin and seeking revenge against the crime boss. He assumes a phantom Avenger persona called Darkman, who, with malleable facial qualities, is able to infiltrate and sow terror in its criminal community. That is a cool concept, and I wish I really knew what that was back in the day, because I think I would have loved it even more when I was a kid. Again, like the description says, it is very much a Phantom of the Opera type Avenger, where he has different skin that he can put on, and it changes his appearance. He's almost like a Mysterio of the of MCU, where he can change who he is. But the black trench coat, the bandaged face, the fedora hat, it is such a cool look that I think goes underappreciated. As I said, it's a Sam Raimi movie, and as soon as it starts, I knew it was a Sam Raimi movie without even seeing the credits. It is shot exactly like Sam Raimi has been shooting movies for the past 20 years. Liam Neeson is really good in this. He overacts a lot in this movie compared to things like Taken, but he does a really good job for the role. Like I said, the look is really cool. There are a ton of practical effects and explosions and just things going off. If you like that old school, nothing really CG'd, that's the movie you should be going to see. You should definitely check this movie out. It's a lot of fun, and there's 2 to 3 more. I think there's 3. It is such a good movie. I highly recommend it to any comic book fan. And I've never read the books, but I hear it's a very good book as well. It's what Sam does best. Exactly. It is what Sam Raimi does best. And again, if I knew it was a Sam Raimi movie, I probably would have watched it a lot more, because yeah, it's such a Sam Raimi movie. Just the shots of like the instant close-ups on faces and stuff. I'm like, oh, Sam, I love your directing style. It's so fun. It's so illogical, but still so fun. So now we have Darkman. Now we're going to go a little further in the decade. We're going to go in 1995. And folks, if you know me, if you've been on this channel before, if you've seen me on Instagram and everything, you know I love me some Judge Dredd. The photo of me and my Judge Dredd cosplay is on my banner up there. I love the character Judge Dredd. I think I have this affinity for lawgivers, law-abiding characters. Green Lantern's a policeman. We've got Judge Dredd, who's a policeman. Like I don't know why. I've got this affinity for those characters. And this movie doesn't really make that a good case when it comes to me explaining why I like Judge Dredd. Because this is not the comic in the least. And not in the way like The Mask, where The Mask was a very great movie and it was a great comic. This is a great comic, and this is not a great movie. There's multiple reasons why, but let's jump into the synopsis of this first. In crime-plagued future, the only thing standing between order and chaos is Judge Joseph Dredd, played by Sylvester Stallone. His duty: police the violent metropolitan sprawls that crowd the decaying earth and kill criminals on the spot if necessary. The tables are turned, however, when a maniacal ex-judge, Rico Armand Assante, frames Dredd for murder. But at his opponents soon discover not even a prison sentence can stop Dredd from dueling out his signature brand of justice. That description is way more exciting than this movie is. I'm sorry. So if you're a diehard fan of Judge Dredd, you hate this movie. One of the main things about Judge Dredd is Judge Dredd never takes that helmet off. No one really knows what Dredd looks like from the nose up. That has always been his signature look. There have been parodies of him taking the helmet off and he's got another helmet underneath. Stallone takes the helmet off about 20 minutes into the movie and never puts it back on. He is pretty much off helmet 90% of the movie, unfortunately. Why? Because they spent a ton of money on Sylvester Stallone and wanted to make sure his mug was seen as much as possible. There have been posters and covers of DVDs of this movie that do not show him in the big shoulders or the helmet. I've looked at those posters and went, if I have no idea what this movie is and you say it's Judge Dredd, I don't believe you, because he looks nothing like Judge Dredd. He looks like Stallone holding a gun. So yeah, it's not great. Stallone, I think Stallone as an actor does a fine job for what it is. It is not a serious movie. Rob Schneider is in this movie. The animal, the Deuce Bigelow, Rob Schneider is in this movie as the comic relief. And he does what he normally does. Not the best, but, you know, in the day, people liked him. It's more of a humorous take on it, trying to get that comic relief from Schneider. Armand Assante is the standout in this movie. He overacts so much in this, and it honestly makes the movie better. He is very much a comic book villain, which is great in the 90s. It's very over the top, but very good. The only other things I can really say about this are the word law is said in about 500 different dialects from 10 different actors. Like Armand Assante says law about at least 100 different ways. Stallone with his little bit of a drawl, he says law in about 50 different ways. It's comically funny. The interesting thing that I don't think anybody really knows, I'm just a big music fan, and I found this out. There is a band in Europe, I cannot remember their name. When I make a short of this, I'll put it down in the bottom. In this movie, there is a machine type police force that I believe was before they introduced the judges. And they're all offline. And Armand Assante's character, Rico, brings one back to life. And when he brings it back to life, he's like 8 foot tall, big head. He's all metallic. There is a band in Europe that is one of, if not the first band to use AI drumming. So their entire drum kit is I think it's a real drum kit, but the thing drumming is all AI done. And the character is the machine from Judge Dredd. It's the big mech or whatever you want to call it before the judges came in. And it's like, I've seen videos of this band play live, and it's the machine, and the machine's doing all the actions and everything, but I'm like, that's copyright infringement to a T. Like, you're literally using a made-up character from a movie, and you're using it in a band and making money off this. So, again, I'll try and find the video, and I'll post it on when I make this. I'm going to cut this into a short and post it on YouTube Shorts. but I want people to see it because it's actually really, really weird to see that outside in the real world. I guess someone found the prop and just built it to actually move. So it's really cool to think that someone's actually using a prop from this movie to make music, and it's actually drumming in a band. So that's Judge Dredd, and anyone who's seen it knows it's not faithful to the comic book at all, and that's fine. It's 1995. Now we're getting into 1997, and when you get into the late 90s, you know that the world of Marvel and DC being the kings is not as secure as it once was. In the mid to late 90s, we had a group of comic book artists and writers leave their cushy jobs in the Marvel and DC camps because they were not able to take any of their own properties and make them their own. Anytime you work for Marvel and DC, you kind of work with their toys, and anything you make that is your own character becomes their character. So a bunch of these artists and writers came together and built Image Comics. And with Image Comics came the king of the comic book world in the late 90s, and the one that everyone fell in love with, soon got a movie, and that was Spawn. Now, Spawn is a big comic book character in the comic book world. A lot of the fringe fans who aren't big comic book fans but know the movies don't know a lot about this character, but this is one of the most important characters in comic books history. This is the best-selling African-American character ever, which is a big deal. The movie follows the comic book script fairly straightforward and to the same. So we've got covert government assassin Al Simmons, played by Michael Jai White, is killed after being double-crossed by his boss, Jason Wynn, played by Martin Sheen. Upon arriving in Hell, Simmons is offered an opportunity to return to Earth if he's willing to lead an evil army. He accepts and is reincarnated as a Hellspawn, a twisted, horribly disfigured version of his former self. However, Spawn serves as a force of good, much to the dismay of the Devil's henchman, a wicked clown played by Mr. John Leguizamo. Now, that again does follow the graphic novel and the comic book series pretty point for point. Not long after the series started did we get more side characters and such, like Sam and Twitch and stuff, that aren't mentioned in this movie. But for the first couple issues, you kind of get the gist of it. This is an odd one. This one is very, very good at getting everything right with the story, but I feel like we're still missing a little bit. It is kind of slow. It is kind of a slow movie, kind of a slow movie. There was an animated movie, 3-part movie going on as well that HBO released. That is really way more faithful than this version, but it's still good. The CGI is bad. I will 100% admit the CGI is terrible in this movie, especially the ending. Michael Jai White plays Al Simmons and Spawn well. He plays it very well. There is a lot of movie without the face. Without that, he's got a lot of just his normal beat-up, disfigured face, which in the comics is accurate. He does have, he does go back and forth. However, again, you paid for Michael Jai White. You want to see Michael Jai White. John Leguizamo, as I said on previous episodes of the show, is one of my favorite actors. He does a great job as Violator. He, again, is more funny in this than serious, but he does have a serious side to him. But I think that was okay. The comic book does have him kind of bounce around that humorous side a bit, so it kind of works. In the animated book, or in the animated series and in the comics, there is a lot of shots of Spawn in the shadows with just the cape coming up in the eyes and the green smoke. There's not a lot of that in this. There's a lot more of him in the light, which, you could be hit and miss on that. Personally, I think they did a fine job on the suit. I think it's pretty... Whoop, there we go. Wrong way. Let me see what the next one's going to be. it's pretty accurate when it comes to what the comic book is. It is a little more, not organic, but it's hard to do organic stuff in the 90s. Overall, it's a fine movie. I personally don't think it's as bad as people say. It's hard to kind of do a 90s comic book movie. And Spawn has a ton of backstory and a ton of little things here and there. So trying to get everybody up to date with how everything works in that universe is a little harder to do. It's very much like Green Lantern. I feel like that's why they need to do a Green Lantern show more than a movie, is because trying to understand all the backstory and stuff, it's kind of hard to do it in under 2 hours, 2.5 the most. So they did as best they could. This image of him is very important to me, and that is because when the world of Kijiji first came out, I made my first purchase from there, let's say, probably after Kijiji was up for about a month. I went on there and started looking for stuff. I have that cardboard cutout from the theater. I purchased this from, I think I only paid $50 for it, but I have that cardboard cutout. There's a platform it sits on, and there's 4 images of each character. There's Al, there's Wanda, there's Wynn, and there's Violator underneath it. The only problem is, though, I did not work with a ruler when I bought this thing. I bought it thinking, oh, it's going to be life-size, and it is life-size. However, you don't realize he is on a platform, and that cape goes a little higher than his head. This thing is like 8.5 feet tall. It's huge, but I still have it. I don't have it here. I have it at my mom's house because it's all folded up because I have nowhere to put it here either. But yeah, this is an important image because it's one of the first things I purchased off Kijiji, and I love having it. I saw someone post it on, someone was selling it on Kijiji or on Facebook Marketplace like a month ago. And I was like, oh my God, another one of those exists in the area. That's so funny. I thought I was the only one. So there we go. We got Spawn. Now we got 2 more to go, and I kind of spoiled it by looking ahead on the image, but screw it anyways. In the 90s, we had Spawn, and we had all these amazing comic book movies. However, we had DC trying to figure out what they can do with other characters besides Batman and Superman, because those are the only 2 properties at that point that had done well for them. They've done the old Wonder Woman TV show, but when it came to movies, Batman, Superman, those were the 2. Well, they tried something different with their next one, and they thought the best way to do it is to bring in a celebrity to be the character. And we ended up with 1997's Steel, starring the Shack Attack, Shaquille O'Neal. Now, oh boy, this movie it's a struggle, but it's also funny. Let's go through the synopsis. A military scientist takes to the streets as a high-tech crusader when his work on a formidable new weapon is hijacked. When a version of his weapon, which neutralizes enemies without killing him, starts appearing in the outside world, he dons a special suit and transforms himself in a cartoon-style superhero. Emphasis on cartoon-style superhero, and these are taken off Wikipedia. That is not me throwing that in there. Yeah. If you've read Superman, you know that Steel does play a big part in the death of Superman, which was big at the time. So I understand why they wanted to do Steel. However, putting the Shack Attack on there is not the way I would have went. Shaquille O'Neal is not the best actor. However, he was a major NBA player, so I kind of get why. But again, he's not a good actor. The suit in this is just bad. It doesn't really resemble the comic book that much. It looks almost like a Knight's Tale movie. Like it's all mesh in here. There are several scenes where shoulders and collarbones and stuff flex. So it looks very rubbery in the movie. There's sonar weapons that he uses. He doesn't really traditionally use the hammer like he does in the comics. Specifically, there is a joke in this that falls so flat. Richard Roundtree is in this movie. If you don't know who Richard Roundtree is, you probably know the song that he's most associated with, and that is the theme song to the TV show he started, and that is Shaft. He was Shaft in the TV show, and he is in this movie. And he makes a lot of the weapons and he makes the suit for Shaquille O'Neal as Shaft, or as Steel. And he shows Steel the big hammer that Steel walks around with. And when Richard Roundtree is describing the hammer, he says, "I really like what I did with this. I especially like the shaft." And it is the most groan-inducing joke. Like, no, like, you were such a cool guy, and now you're making jokes like that. That face that Shaq's making in this poster is pretty accurate to what his performance is like. He doesn't really show any emotion. He talks through his teeth, which you can't really tell if he's happy. You can't really tell if he's sad. You can't really tell how angry he is. It's a lot of just staring into people's eyes and talking like this. And it gets really annoying after a while. But the cartoony style, again, there is part of me that does love that style. My favorite Batman movie is Batman Forever, and I know everyone makes fun of that movie, but I like the campiness a bit. I grew up on Batman 66, so I can't slam that style too much. If you're wanting to laugh and you're wanting to see just a bad comic book movie, go watch it. It's not something I would say that's groan-inducing the entire movie. It's just, here's a good analogy. If The Mask tried to be serious, that's what Steel is. Same style of acting, same over-the-topness, but tried to be serious. That's what Steel is. Why'd you pick Shaquille O'Neal? I love Shaq too. Like I'm a Shaq fan. I loved him. I loved him with the Lakers. I especially loved him with the Celtics. But I'm sorry, man. Like I can't. You're acting. Go DJ. Go get your doctorate and all that stuff. But no, I'm sorry. Andre in chat says Batman Forever is easily my favorite of the first four. It's interesting you say that, because next week we might be talking about Batman movies. But let's finish this off. One last one, folks. If you've been a fan of this channel before and you've seen, I've talked about this movie, not as much as TMNT, but it is one of, if not my favorite comic book movies ever made. I feel like it is not the exact same as the comic book, but I feel it gets enough of it right that it is incredible. That, of course, is The Crow, starring Brandon Lee. I watch this at least once to twice a year, right from the beginning to the end, not just watch clips. This movie means so much to me. Like, seriously, it means so much to me. Every iteration that they did after this is crap. I'm sorry. I like City of Angels as a not comparing it to the first one, but everything after it has just been terrible. This is Crystal. I'm telling you, one day you're coming over here and we're watching it. Crystal says in chat she's still never seen it. I'm telling you, you gotta watch it. It is like I love this movie so much. I don't care that if anybody sits down and watches with me, I openly cry at the end because it is such a good ending. I mean, yes, it is unfortunately the last, as Marcy says in chat, is unfortunately the last appearance of Brandon Lee, who famously, or infamously, whatever way you want to say it, was shot on set after a prop gun went off and killed him. So this is the last performance of Brandon Lee, and it is sad to say the least because of how that ended. but still such an incredible movie. Let's quickly go through the synopsis if you are unaware of it, and if you are not aware of it, I don't know how. The night before his wedding, musician Eric Draven, played by Brandon Lee, and his fiancée Shelley are brutally murdered by members of a violent inner-city gang. On the anniversary of their death, Eric rises from the grave and assumes the gothic mantle of the Crow, a supernatural avenger, tracking down the thugs responsible for the crimes and mercilessly murdering them. Eric eventually confronts head gangster Top Dollar, played by Michael Wincott, to complete his macabre mission. This, it is very similar to the comics. It is. There are some things that have been changed because the comic is a little bit different. I don't want to go into too much of what the differences are, but there is some differences. The movie's incredible. The soundtrack is incredible. The industrial vibe of this, the Nine Inch Nails feel to it. If you're of that generation, you know how important this was to that culture. You can't find someone who didn't grow up in the 90s and was a part of, the industrial music generation that didn't understand how important this movie was. The mood of this movie is important. Seeing the portrayal of Eric, and I think it's something that a lot of people get wrong in the new versions, is he is very much scary to the people he's intimidating, but when he's with people that knew him as Eric Draven before he became the Crow, he's fun-loving, he's not intimidating in the least. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people get wrong. I think a lot of people see him as a vigilante of just, I'm going to murder everybody, but he has enough interactions with other people that you see that compassionate, loving side with Shelley, with Ernie Hudson's character, the police officer. You see a lot more of that personality. I feel that's one of the things that we really lose when you find out about Brandon Lee's passing. Is he's such a good actor. Seeing that him bring that emotion out is such an incredible performance. There's a point in the movie where he goes on a rooftop and plays his guitar, and it's only 30 seconds. It's only a couple. Yeah, I'd probably say 30 seconds of him playing just this slow melodic. There is a YouTube video that someone made, and it's an ambiance channel, and it is that riff and that playing intertwined with some more music. It's 5-6 hours long. I'm not joking. I've played that in the background doing work, doing cosplay, and just let it run. And it just makes me feel so good. The biggest thing about this movie that I think a lot of people, even I, have some trouble really noticing is that Brandon was killed before the shooting had ended. So they still had scenes to shoot in the movie where he was involved. And there are some scenes where you can see they've shot him in a way where he's in the shadows, or he's lit an odd way where you don't see, it's like an over the shoulder or something like that, or a POV perspective. And all of that looks intentional. And I feel like it's such the director and all of the cinematographer, the actors, etc., all deserve a round of applause for making it look seamless. There's only one scene in this movie where he's running across the rooftops at one point where you can tell it's CG. And there's no way they could have done it besides CG. But any other scene where Brandon's character is, you look at it and you know it's probably shot because he's not available because he's passed at this point, but it looks intentional. It doesn't look like they've cut anything from it. It doesn't look like they went, well, now we got to move this to make it look right. No. It is such a great movie cinematography wise, and it is if you have out of all these movies, out of all of these movies, this is the one I recommend overall, 100%. 100%. The other ones are great from a joke factor, but if you've never seen The Crow, please watch it. You may, it may, I might be stuck in the 90s where I'm like, this is an epic movie, but I feel like even now you could watch this and go, at least you may not like it, but you may at least watch it and go, I understand the significance. And even if you say that, that's all I need. But I'm telling you, if you're a comic book fan and you understand all that went into this movie, and this, you don't even have to know the source material, how cool this movie is as a comic book movie, it's amazing. And I know comic book movie writers and directors of today say that that is an influence on a bunch of projects they've done in the past. So, folks, that is it for the night. So let's go through them again quickly. We've got The Crow. We've got, what else? We've got Steel. We've got Spawn. We've got Stallone's Judge Dredd. We've got Darkman. We've got Captain America. And we've got Barb Wire. That is all for tonight, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in still. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. It means a lot. It shows that you like these 90s videos. It shows that you like these talking about old movies and stuff. It means a lot to me. Next week, Andre, you read my mind earlier. Next week, we are going to be talking about the 90s Batman movies. And when I say 90s, we are including the 89 Michael Keaton movie. I really want to talk about these 4 movies because I know a lot of people have their opinions on them, and I do too. I grew up with these movies, and I want to know what you guys think. So make sure to tune in next week. Because we're going to talk about that. And then that's it for the 90s. We're not going to do any more after that. The week after that, you're definitely going to want to tune in because we're going to be going over the top nerd and geek Christmas gifts for 2024. I want you guys to be here because we're getting close to that time where we got to start buying stuff. And the first weekend of the year, first weekend of December, we're going to go through what I think some of the gifts should be under your tree. And you can also send this to those who are still looking for things, because this might get them, give them some ideas of what to get you for Christmas. So, hope you're having a great night. Hope you're having a great week. I will hopefully be on Instagram sometime this week to go through more cosplay stuff because I'm still working on Red Skull and a whole lot more. I love you all. I will hopefully see you very, very soon. Have yourselves a great week, and I will see you on the flip side. Take care. Love you all. See you soon. Talk to you.
Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.